All right. I think we're back, and I think that I've got sound. All right, cool. So, thank you for letting me know. Hang on one second here. Just getting everything all set up, and then we can jump back in and keep going with this drawing. All right, so where were we? This is the purpose of this stream, is to work out stuff like this. Work out problems, and I was able to fix my audio problem. It took a few minutes. The name of the game here is angles and cylinders. We're going to use cylinders to find the basic anatomy, and we're going to use angles to find the basic energy of the pose. So here we go. Please don't hesitate to make comments. Let me know how I can improve the stream, and if you want to talk about drawing, just let me know what you want to talk about. So I'm stepping back, I'm looking at, I think I've gotten this cylinder slightly wrong. When I erase stuff that I think I've gotten incorrect, I really do try to leave a ghost image so that I can correct upon the old line before having to create a new line. I find that if I erase it completely and then try again, I often make the exact same mistake. So, okay. Angle of this leg, got this planned out. We've got it planned out as a basic cylinder, and then we got this leg planned out as well. I want to make sure I've got this leg length correct, so I'll take a quick measurement from the toe to the pubic bone. Bring it up. And it goes the same distance from the pubic bone, about 3/5 of the way up the head. So from here to here, it's going to go down to here. So this is about where it's going to go to. And that's how I figured this stuff out. Now I want to place the ankle, and I'm just going to use a basic plumb line. See that it's coming out to about here. Looks like the ankle's placed correctly. Lower leg, basic cylinder. Really don't overcomplicate it. If it helps you, start the basic cylinder as just a cylinder. Just drop it down. Don't worry about putting in that calf muscle yet. Just get this basic cylinder in there. And look at the volume of this lower leg start to come to life. Let's do the same thing with the upper leg. There to there. We've got the stool coming out, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. Just a basic cylinder, just like that. And if you get those cylinders drawn correctly, I mean, look how simple this is. We're just bringing that and putting it over here. Then the volume of this leg should start to come to life. How are we going to handle the complex anatomy of a foot? We're going to ignore how complex it is. And we are just going to get the basic shape. I'm going to pretend that the heel doesn't even exist right now. Just put this down like this. And then I can add on the heel afterwards. So what I've done there is I'm just taking a super complex shape and I'm reducing it to two simple shapes. So see how often you can do that. See how often you can take complex things and imagine them simply. And the better you get at that, the easier drawing is going to be. So same thing here. We've got the cylinder of the upper leg planned. How about the cylinder of the lower leg? I'm just going to allow myself to pretend like it is just a cylinder. And there we see the volume of the leg coming to life. Same thing with the foot here. Just pretend like it's a simple shape. We're not drawing a foot, we're drawing a simple shape. What shape is it? Something like that. Okay, now we can get the indication of the stool in. I think I placed this foot incorrectly, but I don't really care quite yet. Let's drop a plumb line. The ankle should come to here. So it is placed incorrectly. Not a huge deal. I mean, this can just come in a little bit farther, like this. This can come out. The most important thing is drawing loose, being flexible. If you draw loose, you should be able to move things around pretty easily. Okay. All right, how's the stream going? I appreciated comments from some of you on the first attempt, and that helped me figure out that I had a sound issue. Let me know what you think about this round. Give me a thumbs up or something if everything's going well. Okay. Now I'm going to start to plan the lower arm here. And big surprise, what shape am I simplifying this to? Two cylinders. And you can actually see the ellipses that describe the cylinders on the anatomy. We're not going to get sucked into all that. We're just going to keep it simple. How are these cylinders tapered? That's how poses like these are going to come to life. Correct augmenting of simple forms. So we're going to take this shape here. It was good enough at the beginning. And now we'll augment them and see if we can't, just by augmenting them slightly, discover some of the anatomy going on there. Okay, so let's keep going here. We've got this sternocleidomastoid coming in. We've got this tendon here between the two clavicles. We've got a lot of hair coming down, so I'll go ahead and put that in. You can see her ear. Okay. Here, I'm not going to get too sophisticated. I'm going to basically imagine the breasts as just a couple of spheres. And just like any other shape here, I'm taking a basic shape. So here we've been working with cylinders. Here I'm taking a basic sphere and I'm augmenting it. This volume is being pressed by the arm here. So I'm just taking a sphere and I'm just augmenting it, right? And that's a big part of, that's all I'm doing here. And I'm kind of outlining a little bit more than I normally would, just to sort of illustrate the process. Okay. And I think this line is, I don't need that anymore. And I don't need the cylinder completed anymore, although it's okay for you to leave that stuff in. Rib cage coming down, then pressing out here. All of this going into shadow. Here we can start to augment this basic shape for the hand. Just like that. I'm going to reduce the hand to two parts. One, the flat of the hand on top. And then you can see, simple shape here. And then down here, I'm going to take all four fingers and reduce them to just one plane change. Keeping it as simple as possible for as long as possible. Okay, instead of drawing eyes, nose, mouth, I think I'm just going to plan the division of light and shadow down the face, and then down the neck here, just like that. Because once again, I'm more concerned with modeling the form than I am with capturing details. Details are so easy. In comparison to gesture, details are just so easy. So I can always add the details, so I'm not going to be in a rush to do that, because by jumping too quickly into the details, we are going to miss the big picture. Cast shadow here, it's going to wrap up and over. We can see how this is really coming to life. A very difficult, complex pose made simple by sticking to our basic game plan of reducing complex anatomy to as simple a combination of shapes as we can possibly imagine. Here, the knee, the anatomy of the knee just becomes a single shadow correctly placed. A lot of times, if you're worried about anatomy, learn to draw shadow shapes correctly. You draw shadow shapes correctly, and the knee is going to start to come to life all on its own. Complex anatomy will start to come to life all on its own. So, all right, and if we want to get into the details here, I'm going to think about placing the brow ridge first. I think the brow ridge is probably the most important part of the face. The correct anatomical term for it is the superciliary crest. And people's unique brow ridge shape has so much to do with their unique appearance. Got to be careful with eyebrows. Eyebrows sit on the brow ridge at the center, and especially with female subjects, the eyebrows will move above the brow ridge as they move out. So, just to be careful how much you rely on that. Okay, and then basic shadow shapes down here. We've got this cast shadow moving up the inside of the thigh, around, down here. Okay. All right. Same thing over here. I've drawn the terminating line. And I'm just going to trust that that's drawn correctly. And if it's drawn correctly, then you really only need one value. You know, shading, just like everything else, the more simply you can handle it, the easier your life is going to be. Well, your drawing life at least. Okay. All right. What do we think about this one? Can one of y'all send me a message in the chat? I just want to test the chat function and see if that works. So I've got the chat open here. Yeah, you can even just say test or something like that. I'm going to change my photo reference. We're going to do another drawing here. Okay, this is a cool photo reference. I'm going to use this one. I'll switch it here on my computer. Where on earth is it? Here it is. Okay. How's that? Is that showing up? We're kind of losing a little bit of it. Let me see if I can move this around. There. Okay, that's a cool one. All right, so this is a crazy difficult pose, right? Where on earth would you start with this one? Well, with this one, I'm going to start with the basic head shape here. Once again, I really, really like starting with the head, and the reason is whatever the mind determines to do, usually the head responds first, and then the body follows. So I'm going to try to leave, and I just did a quick measurement, I'm going to try to leave 3 heads on this side, 2 heads on this side of the head, because I don't want these feet to go off the page. So, basic head shape. And with a basic head shape, the way I like to start is I really am just thinking about, I'm ignoring the complex anatomy of the head. I'm just thinking about, I want to keep it as simple as possible. I'm drawing just a piece of fruit or something like that in a way where if there were a bowl of apples and I drew one of them, I want to have somebody be able to walk up and say, oh, you drew that apple. Well, that's how simply I'm thinking about capturing his head shape. Keeping everything really loose. So I think that's a pretty good attempt at getting his basic head shape here. Now I know the name of the game is to keep it as simple for as long as possible, but one area that I really do love to explore earlier in the drawing, it could be defined as a fine detail, is the ear. And the reason is the ear sits on the back of the jaw, and the jaw does so much to describe the orientation of the head that by drawing the ear in there, you're actually working on some major big picture stuff. Okay, so I don't want to get too far into the head, and I do want to bring this jaw up just a little bit. I think I was a little low on this, so I'll bring this up. That's why I always draw as light as possible, because I am making mistakes constantly. And if you're anything like me, you're going to be using that eraser. So, okay. Next up, basic cylindrical shape for the neck. Noticing how far above the chin it's going to sit, right here. There we go. Now I'm thinking about the basic shape of the upper body here. Okay, so the first thing I want to know, and this is probably the biggest decision you're going to have to make in measuring here. How high up or how far down are you going to put the base of the pelvis? A lot of us will just assume that the pelvis is really far down, because if someone's standing perfectly upright, it is. But this is so foreshortened. So I'm going to measure how many head lengths are going to go into the body. So in other words, 1, 2, 3, how many of those? So I'll measure right here. So one head length equals, so it's about 4/5 of a head length that bring us down to the base of the pelvis. So it's here. This is the line for the base of the pelvis. Never would have thought that. I'm going to measure it again just to make sure. Yeah, it's about here. That's crazy. So it's going to look incorrect until we start to fill this in. So we're going to start with the basic shape of the upper body. So we've got the line for the shoulder coming down here, and you can just give a gestural line saying this is where it's going to go. This one over here, finding these angles, it's going to go something like this. And that's just the energy of the pose right there. Okay, now how far out does the edge of the rib cage go? I mean, that's what I want to start with, is this side of the rib cage and this side. Don't just automatically think the rib cage sits directly under the head, because that's what people look like. Really measure it. So I'm holding up a plumb line on this side of the rib cage and identifying that it is almost a complete head out here. It's going to go out to about here. Angle, it's not perfectly vertical. It's close, but it's leaning out like that. That slight V shape persists. How about the inside? Where does the inside go? Lines up perfectly with the ear. This is about where this pectoralis major is going to come out. So once again, just a gestural line. And now we can complete these forms. So there's a couple ways to draw. One, we can just observe the shapes. But the other way is we can actually say, no, I'm going to find the rib cage. So let's find the rib cage. I don't usually draw this way, but it's a perfectly good way to draw. And so there we've got the general shape of the rib cage. And we can wrap this around, ignoring the shoulder if we want. Same thing over here. It's going to come down something like this. So there we have the basic shape of the rib cage. Basic shape of the pelvis, very compressed. This is going to come back out. And then we can even just use his underwear. Just like that. And when we step back, are we seeing that crazy foreshortening? So, at this stage, let's keep going. Okay, so how far out should this elbow go over here? Well, here's a little technique that I really love using. I'm going to ignore the entire arm. How do you find the arm by ignoring the entire arm? Well, the first thing I've done is I've found the horizontal line where the wrist meets the hand. Second, how far out is the hand? It's going to be right about here is the inside of where the wrist and the hand meet. Then I can just get a general shape for the hand. Really ignore, please ignore how complex hands are at this stage in your drawing. Don't get sucked in. The hand comes down to here though. I do want to get the shape correct. Let me double check this because that just feels like it's a huge hand. Yeah, so this needs to be down to here maybe. But yeah, the hand is going to end up being a lot bigger than I thought. So just default to trusting your measurements. And let's just see if this feels correct if I just default to trusting it. Does that feel too big for the hand? What do you all think? I think that is actually feeling pretty correct. Notice how I just want the basic shape. Act like I've never seen a hand before and all I can see is the silhouette of this shape. Just try to capture the silhouette. I think that looks pretty correct. So I'm going to keep on going. Okay, so now I've got 2 points here. I've got this shoulder here, which I can go ahead and draw actually. Right here. I can bring the shoulder out and up and let myself ignore how complex this muscle structure is, and I'm just going to treat it like it's this simple shape. We can remove this right there. I'll step back. Is that shoulder too big? I think it's okay for now. I think it might be a little bit too big, but it's all about the angles. That shoulder's not going to make or break the drawing. Okay, now I've got these two angles that if I get these right, it'll give me the placement of that elbow. So this is going to come out something like this, and this is going to come out like this, and here's the positioning of the elbow. Pretty simple stuff, guys. Pretty simple. Once again, if you allow yourself to simplify what you're doing, drawing is pretty easy. So I'm going to step back and ask myself, does that angle look correct? Let's continue to simplify this lower arm into a simple tapered cylinder. So just think about it like this. Let's say we're drawing a roll of paper towels. Pretty easy to draw that, right? Well, take your roll of paper towels and taper it so that it's wider at the back and thinner at the front, and suddenly you have the shape of a lower arm. Stepping back, am I seeing his lower arm? Yeah, I think I am. I want to adjust this ellipse here. I think I can adjust the ellipse to describe the shape of a lower arm a little bit better. And then the elbow is going to build off like right there. And once again, complex anatomy becomes very manageable when we're just looking for basic shape patterns. Okay, I'm a little bit worried that this arm is way too big, so I'm going to measure this again. 1, 2, 2 4/5. Yeah, this is way too far out. 1, 2, 2 4/5. It needs to be actually out to about there. Holy mackerel, I missed that one by a lot. So, this is why you get too sucked into the details, you start making big mistakes. Maybe it's closer to 2, so here we go. 1, 2. Yeah, out to about here. Something like that, actually. This is a good example of why, man, really keep this as light as possible for as long as possible. Because if I kept going with that, this drawing would start to look ridiculous. Now it's just a simple issue of moving everything over. Once again, finding this basic hand shape. Okay, same thing over here. We're going to bring this deltoid down. We know that this hand is going to come from about here, underneath the pelvis, up just like this. Okay, this is looking a lot better than it was earlier. So that's good. Okay, how about these legs? I've probably waited way too long to get these legs in here, but this is too far over, dropping this down and moving it back. Where does this go to? Just on the inside of the ear. Okay. Moving things around. Then I know that this leg, and we are going to just reduce this to a simple, big surprise cylinder. And finding the angle for this lower leg, something like this. Same thing over here. And this lower leg. Angle for the lower leg. Something like that. And you can see the energy of the pose starting to come to life, right? It's out a little far. How far down am I going to put this foot? This is another mistake I commonly make. So we'll measure from the top of the knee to the heel. And I see that it goes from the pubic bone to the right here at the back of the head. Boom, boom, and here it is. That's going to be how far down the foot comes. And it's the heel, but so the front of the foot will come down a little bit farther. So this is a nice thick line, but I know I want the inside of that line. Get this basic cylinder, a little bit of tapering. And that lower leg is going to start to come to life. Okay, cool. We've got a comment. NK says I always draw on my sketchbook, the reference being on my phone, so the reference and my canvas are side by side. Yeah, that's excellent. I've got my drawing pad here. This photo reference right here is actually just digital. My TV is behind my easel, so I can see it kind of off to the left. So, okay, thanks for the comment. Here I'm going to take the ankles and connect them via just finding the angle. All right, and is this pose starting to come to life? The anatomy, just so simple. The energy of the pose, that's the essence of what we want to capture here. Now that we have all of this planned, and I think this arm is looking better, now we can begin to modify these basic shapes and find a more sophisticated understanding of the anatomy here. Very developed trapezius here. And the clavicle coming down here. Suprasternal notch. Into the pectoralis major. This one is getting more stretch. But you can see by just overlapping forms, thinking about what forms overlap what forms. You don't need to know what all these muscles are, what all these tendons and bones are. If you overlap everything correctly, should just come to life. You know, a lot of my students ask, when am I ready for anatomy? You know, if you just learn to draw from observation, just figure out how simple volumes overlap other simple volumes. The anatomy in your drawings will just come to life all on their own. You can study anatomy at a later point for sure. There's definitely a time and a place where it's time for anatomy. If you want to get good at figure drawing, that's a more advanced step that is maybe my favorite thing to teach. So. Overlapping forms here. See how this comes in? And we've got this little piece that comes out and then back in. And then this cylinder comes in like that. By observing that this overlaps this, which overlaps this little piece right there, what we've incidentally drawn is the rib cage overlapping the external oblique muscle, which is overlapping the gluteus medius, which is being overlapped by the entire upper leg here. So, learning these terms, yeah, it's helpful. Learning to draw overlapping volumes, that's where the real money is. So NK says, I see you measure how far down the foot goes in relation to another measurement. Does it always have to be in relation to another? Like you say, this goes 2 times into that. Yeah, excellent question. Yes, it always has to be in relationship to something else. So, for example, if I want to measure, what length is this right here? See, this drawing is so much bigger than my photo reference. And so really, in my mind, I'm taking the photo reference and I'm making it bigger on the page. How am I doing that? By understanding ratios. Yeah, there's a little bit of math in drawing. It's you know, in drawing, you want to understand how much bigger is this leg than, for example, this leg, right? Because this one's foreshortened. It's going to get shorter. This one's stretched out, it's going to be longer. By understanding the relative length of these 2 legs next to one another, we can bring our drawings to life. So yeah, measurement always has to be in relationship to other parts of the drawing. This foot, I drew in the wrong spot. So I'm going to really... And I'm leaving this ghost image because I want to move the leg over and I need to see where I should move it over from. And that's going to be a lot more correct. So, NK, thank you for the questions, by the way. I really appreciate your participation in the stream. I don't know if YouTube chat just gives me your initials or if that's your actual name, but this is my first time ever streaming on YouTube, so I'm still figuring out how it all works. Okay, so this is starting to look a little more correct. Okay, let's complete this arm here. So we've got this pectoralis major stretching out, joining up with the movement of this deltoid here. And then we've got the bicep coming down, But before I get into too much detail there, I really do want to get the cylindrical shape of this lower arm planned. And there's that cylindrical shape of the lower arm. This is too far in, it needs to come out about here. Just using plumb lines to figure that out, I learned that this should line up with the inside of the ear, and I did some work to place the ear correctly, so I'm going to trust that. Alex from Kenya. Awesome. Nice to meet you, Alex. Thanks for jumping into my stream. Very cool to see you in here. All right. So, looks like all the major shapes are really starting to come together. So this stage of the drawing becomes all about shape augmentation. I think this bicep needed to be a little bit bigger. You can see how I'm finding the angle between these volumes and other parts of the body. You can see how I brought this up and I see, oh, it lines up with the underside of the chin. Constantly making comparative references like those. Complexity of the knee, forget about it. Just find the shadow shapes and it'll all come together. Same thing here, if I'm thinking about the eyebrows, don't start skipping steps. Find those angles. Find that shadow shape. Angle of the nose, perfectly vertical. That's the name of the game right there. Angles, angles, angles. You know, I would say if you want to get really good at drawing, the most important thing is just learn to find angles. That's it. If you can find angles, you can draw anything. I'm telling you, that's it. Look at all this compression under here. This overlapping here describes some key anatomical points, which I can teach you what they are, or I can just say keep overlapping stuff and anatomy will be a cinch. Cool. Let's do a little bit more on this leg and then I'll call it a day on this one. All right, what do y'all think? Any questions? Any final thoughts? I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on a commission. I'm thinking about live streaming it too. So if you want to check that out, that's next. All right. So I'm going to take a short break and then I'm going to jump into that and I will live stream that drawing too, I think. So keep an eye out for that. For those of you who've stuck around and watched the whole thing, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you on the next stream. So, peace. I'll catch you later.